Hi, I'm G. I'm going to be taking you through a 30-minute restorative practice today. So if you haven't done restorative before or you haven't done it with me, then I'm just going to explain for a little minute about how I teach. So with a restorative, what I tend to do is I tend to explain what props we're going to need for the pose. I will then demonstrate myself getting into the pose so that you can see how to set it up. And then there'll be some moments, a few minutes in the pose where we stay stationary, we allow the body to adjust, we focus on our breathing, and there'll be some moments of silence as well, where we try and clear the mind. Today, for my props, I have 2 cushions and I have a blanket. So, pretty simple props today. Nothing that you hopefully wouldn't have around the house. These can be substituted with jumpers, duvets, bed pillows, anything that you've got handy. So let's get started. My first pose I always start in every single restorative practice is our effortless rest pose. So it's almost like our Savasana, but at the beginning of class. So making sure we've got something to support the head and neck. And there's an option also to put something underneath the knees. So in this instance, I'm going to roll up my pillow. But if you have a bolster at home, then you can use a bolster underneath the knees. But it's not necessarily essential. We can just use a pillow instead. So by having something underneath the knees, we're relieving some of the pressure in our lower back. We can instead have our legs bent up, and our knees can come in together as well. Or we can simply lay our legs outstretched like we would in Savasana. In all of these poses that I'm going to take you through today, it is most important that we find the right one for us, the one that we find most comfortable, that we can relax down into. So whatever version you're in, I want you to take a moment to take any wriggles and any adjustments. So you might want to wriggle your shoulders, make sure that your shoulder blades are nicely tucked down your spine. You might want to push through the feet and tuck the tailbone to flatten out the lower back. Your hands can be on your tummy or beside you, palms to the ceiling. And then, if you feel comfortable, we close down the eyes. And as we lie here, we take a moment to notice how we are. So how we are in our mind and how we are in our body. Is there any area of your body that feels tense? Any muscles that need a little more attention in relaxing? Anywhere you can soften a little bit more. And then we turn to our mind. Can we pop a pin in our thoughts for this half an hour? Pop a pin in them and say to ourselves, I give myself permission to come back to that, but this is my half an hour for me. as we're lying here, our breath will have started to soften. Deepen. Our nervous system is going to downshift, and by that it's going to change from our busy thoughts of the day, and it's going to shift down to a calm state where our breath is slow. We're taking slow movements and stillness. And if at any point during the practice your mind starts to wander, any thoughts start to come into your mind, then we need to not engage on them and just let them float by and turn our mind to thoughts of the breath and the pose we're laying. Removing any objects from underneath our knees, we're going to gently roll over onto our preferred side, resting here. We do this just briefly on our way up to seated to make sure that we're keeping our movements nice and steady, to keep our nervous system in that calm state now that we've moved it from high alert. So gently peeling ourselves up to seated. We're going to move into our next pose. So for this pose, I'm going to lie my 2 pillows lengthways down my mat. So if you're using a long bed pillow, you might just be able to use one. Or if you're using your blanket, then you can shape it lengthways. I come sat with my left hip at the end of my props. And we're coming into a closed twist. So we're encouraging a twist down towards our pillows. So my knees stay bent and staggered, and I use my hands either side of the pillows to lower myself down. My left side of my face rests on the pillow, and my left side of my body is more in contact with the pillow than my right, and that is completely normal. We're encouraging a twist down towards the mat, down towards our pillows, trying to square the chest to the floor, but most likely we will only be able to twist a degree of the way. So for most people, our left side will be more in contact, and that's perfectly okay. We want to find the degree of twist that feels comfortable enough for us to relax down. So taking any wriggles and adjustments at the beginning of the pose, making sure that the intensity of the twist is right for us, it's sustainable, we can relax down and we're not holding any tension in our muscles. And once we feel like we've got our Goldilocks pose, the most comfortable version of the pose for us, then we bring our focus back to our breathing, following our habitual inhales and exhales. Allowing the focus on the breath to cause softening throughout the body. Remembering to not judge ourselves if our mind wanders. Just encourage thoughts of the twist that we are in right now. And focusing on our soft breathing. And then using our hands either side of our props, we're going to peel ourselves, walking up to seated. And then we're going to do this twist on the other side. So we're going to bring our right hip to the end of the bolster this time. Legs still staggered. We bring both arms either side of our props and we lower down. This side is our right, so our right cheek meets the pillows. And our right side most likely will be more in contact with our props. We take the first few minutes of the pose, first few moments, to find the right angle for us, the right intensity of the twist. We want to be able to feel a little twist in our lower back, in our torso, but at the same time for it to be comfortable enough for us to relax down into the props, to surrender any tension in our body. We're using props in restorative to hold us at the extent of our range so that there is no work for the muscles. Our muscles can completely relax and we rely on the props like pillows and blankets to do the work for us. So we can find the maximum amount of stretch that we can do and then relax down and give over to our props. It's important to note that it's not necessarily a given that both sides of your body will feel the same. So a twist on your left side might be a little more challenging for you than a twist on your right side. You might find that you can open out more towards the floor on your right side. And this is something to bear in mind, but also something to know that this is normal. It's quite normal for us to feel different on one side of our body to the other. Once again, using our hands either side of our pillows, we walk ourselves up to seated, ready for our next pose. Our next pose is going to be a gentle chest opener. So I'm going to use my two pillows, and I've overlapped them one over the other. You can have them either side, but for me these pillows are quite thin, so I'm just going to overlap them a little bit to give me a little bit more height. So we want to make sure that our head is still supported and our neck is still supported. Those are our first checkpoints of this pose. So both my head and my neck are in contact with my pillow, so I know that they're well supported. Our next checkpoint is to make sure that some of our pillow or our blanket is under the top half of our back, causing our chest to rise and open out. My hips and my glutes are in contact with the floor, giving me some support there. And the soles of my feet are on the floor too. And our options for this pose are to keep our legs parallel and bent like so, or to bring the feet a little wider and collapse the knees in together. Our hands once again can be on our tummy or palms to the sky, arms beside us. As we're laying in this pose for the first few moments, we need to check in with ourselves. Is there anywhere in our bodies that we can release a little bit more tension? Can we release those muscles any more to help us engage more with the pose, to help us feel more relaxed? This is a really nice pose to be able to feel your inhales and your exhales. Your chest is elevated towards the ceiling, so we can really feel the rise and fall of our chest. And this can really help to focus on that methodical inhale and exhale, the rise and fall. Keep listening to your inhales and your exhales, giving you something to focus on and keeping the mind nice and clear. On our next exhale, we're going to rise up to seated, taking nice gentle and slow movements, using our hands either side of us to support our way up to seated. For our next pose, we're coming into an adjusted hero's pose. So hero's pose is known as this. So when we call it adjusted heroes, that's just the addition of our props here. So I'm going to put my blanket along the width of my mat. This is purely to give me a little bit more cushioning behind my shins. And then stacking my pillows on top of one another. In between my legs, and I sit back. So this is a wide-legged hero's pose. And I'll just show you from another angle. Like so. So as we start this pose, we want to make sure that our shins and the top of our feet are in contact with the floor. If you are finding this is too much tension, too intense on your thighs, we can raise our sit bones higher by adding more props. So more cushions, so we're higher up off the ground. So taking a moment to make sure that our props are right for us. And then bringing our awareness to how we're sat. Making sure our sit bones are grounding down through our pillows And our spine is tall, is straight. Relaxing our shoulders down, creating space between the ear and our shoulder. And hands can rest on our thighs. We close down the eyes here. In this pose, we want to try and find 2 lines of movement. We want to ground down through our legs, through our sit bones, into the floor, into our props. But we also want to rise. We want the top of our head to rise toward the ceiling, elongating our spine. So we're grounding down and rising up. The line of movement is vertical. Remember to use your breath to give you a focus point, to keep the mind nice and clear and quiet. We're going to bring our left hand onto our right thigh and our right hand on the floor behind us, or maybe even resting on the sole of our foot if that's easier. And we're going to encourage a twist round to the right side, making sure that we keep that line of movement, so still rising up tall and grounding down through our sit bones. If we feel steady, we can close down the eyes, staying in our twist. And then bringing our hands back to center, our right hand now comes to our left thigh, and our left hand either to the sole of our foot or to the floor behind us, as we encourage a twist round to the left side this time. Still grounding down and rising tall. And closing the eyes if that feels comfortable. Listening or feeling for our breath. And then bringing our arms back to the middle, blinking open the eyes, ready for our final pose of Savasana. So for our Savasana, I'm going to bring a pillow for my head. Just like how we started, we have the option to have something underneath our knees to release some of the tension on our lower spine, or we can have our legs out straight. So I'm going to demonstrate having a pillow underneath the knees, and I've got my blanket nearby. I'm going to unravel it and lie it over me. This is purely for added comfort, but also the weighted aspect of having a blanket over you can be very stress relieving and soothing for the body. Finding the right leg position for you. So legs extended, something underneath the knees, or knees bent up. And there is always the option to take this Savasana lay on your preferred side, if that's more comfortable for your body. And then we let go. We ground down to the floor. And we let go of any tension in our muscles, any busy thoughts in our minds. We use these last few minutes of the pose to find some stillness, physically and mentally. Start to bring your awareness back into the room, back onto your breath. Bring life into the fingers and the toes, the wrists and the ankles. And then removing anything from underneath your knees, rolling over onto your preferred side and resting here. Take a second here to reflect on how you feel physically and mentally at the end of our short practice today. Maybe even take a moment to thank yourself for giving you half an hour for some me time, some time out. And then when you feel ready, meet me seated, hands heart center and eyes closed. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed yourself and managed to relax. Namaste.